There is a truth, hidden behind the veils of time, that whispers gently to those ready to listen. Before the body, before the breath, before the first heartbeat, there was a decision. You were not simply thrown into this life, into this form, or into the web of people around you by accident. Something within you knew, something timeless, something vast. In the silence between incarnations, your soul stood still and clear. You were not alone, surrounded by guides, by wisdom, by the soft presence of those who know more than any earthly book could hold. You looked forward into the life you were about to enter, not as a victim of fate, but as a conscious participant in your own evolution. And in that stillness, you saw them. The one who would cause the most pain, the one who would trigger your deepest wounds, the one whose presence would be like sandpaper against your soul, stripping away illusions, defenses, and comfort until only your truth remained. And you said yes, not out of punishment, not because you had to, but because you knew. You knew that this relationship, this hardest one, held the keys to your liberation. You saw the karmic knots, the unfinished stories, the echoes of ancient entanglements, and you were ready to untie them, not through running or fighting or blaming, but through remembering. You didn't choose the easiest love. You didn't seek the smoothest path. You chose what your soul needed most, the mirror that wouldn't let you look away, the lesson dressed as a person, the wound wrapped in a name and a face. And behind that choice there was great courage. It takes immense strength to walk into a life knowing that pain will be part of the journey, that healing won't come in soft whispers, but in echoes of heartbreak and confrontation. And yet you came, willingly, lovingly, with a heart still open. You see, from the soul's perspective, there is no good or bad. Only growth, only evolution, only the sacred unraveling of all that is false. And the hardest relationships do just that. They unravel you, they burn away the ego, they stretch your heart until it breaks open and reveals what was always there: compassion, resilience, and the power to love beyond conditions. If you're listening to this, there's a reason. You've felt the weight of that one relationship. You've asked why. You've carried the confusion, the anger, the sorrow. But somewhere deeper, beyond the surface pain, you've also felt the whisper: this is not punishment, this is purpose. And perhaps in hearing these words a memory stirs, not in the mind but in the soul. A quiet remembrance of the choice you made. A sacred agreement sealed in light. You picked them not because they would make you happy, but because they would make you whole. Let this truth settle in your being. Let it soften your resistance. You are not broken. You are remembering. You are returning. If these words resonate with something deep within you, like an echo from a place beyond this life, I invite you to stay close. Let this be a space of remembrance. And if you feel called, subscribe to this channel, not out of habit, but as an act of alignment. We are walking this path together now, and there is more to uncover, to understand why you chose that person, the one whose presence shakes your very core. You must look beyond this lifetime, beyond the stories you've been told, beyond even the memories you can consciously recall. Because the soul remembers what the mind forgets, there is a thread that stretches backward through time, a golden, invisible line connecting you to moments and people long gone. You've been here before, you've known them before, and the weight you carry now is often not just from this life, but from many. Weiss speaks of this with clarity, how our most complex relationships often have their roots in unresolved past life experiences. The pain may feel new, but the vibration is ancient. A familiar wound dressed in a new context, different names, different faces, same echo. When you find yourself caught in a cycle with someone, of blame, of betrayal, of deep longing, or endless conflict, it's not a coincidence. It's a reflection, a karmic bond resurfacing, asking not for suffering, but for resolution. It's your soul offering another chance to complete what was once left undone. Sometimes the person who hurts you most in this life was someone you once hurt, or someone you lost, or someone you loved so fiercely that the separation carved a void you've carried ever since. And so you meet again, not to punish, but to balance, to see each other clearly, to choose love instead of fear. And yet, this doesn't mean accepting abuse or staying in harm's way. That's not what soul growth asks of you. It means recognizing the lesson without attaching to the pain. It means finding the wisdom beneath the wound. And sometimes, the deepest healing comes when you choose to walk away with compassion rather than stay in confusion. These karmic ties are not life sentences. They are invitations to awaken, to evolve, to rewrite the story from a higher vibration. And when you begin to view your hardest relationships through this lens, something inside you shifts. The anger begins to melt, the judgment softens, and you stop asking, why is this happening to me, and begin to ask, what is this trying to teach me? This shift in perspective is everything, because the moment you stop seeing yourself as a victim and begin to see yourself as a participant in a much greater dance, you reclaim your power. You stop resisting what is and start aligning with what can be. The soul is not linear. It doesn't speak in words or timelines. It speaks in patterns, in energy, in vibration. And when something feels overwhelmingly familiar, even in its difficulty, it's often a signal that your soul is revisiting a theme it's been trying to master for lifetimes. So ask yourself, what is this relationship showing me about myself? Where am I being asked to grow? What part of my heart is being called to open, even if it hurts? Sometimes the person who challenges you most is simply playing the role your soul requested, not because they are right or perfect, but because their presence is the catalyst, the fire that forges your expansion. And when you begin to see them this way, not as enemy, not even as teacher, but as a soul companion walking beside you through the fire, you begin to heal. Not all at once, not with ease, but with truth. The past may be hidden from your conscious memory, but its energy lives in your body, in your reactions, in your longing to be free. And the moment you see clearly, you begin to untangle the thread, not by force but by presence. What if the person who challenges you the most is also the one reflecting the parts of yourself you've been unwilling to face? This is the hidden truth of soul agreements. The hardest relationships are rarely just about the other person. They are about the self, what remains unhealed, unacknowledged, or unloved within. The external friction often mirrors the internal tension, and every wound they touch is a portal into your own consciousness. It may feel like conflict, but beneath it, there is a call to awareness. The soul doesn't evolve by comfort. It evolves through confrontation, with its own shadows, with its own patterns, with the masks it wears in order to be accepted. And those we feel most entangled with are often the ones who hold the keys to those very masks. Their words, their actions, their presence, like sacred triggers, awaken something dormant inside. You might ask, why does this hurt so much? But a deeper question may be, what in me is being revealed through this pain? Pain, when seen through the eyes of the soul, is not punishment. It is feedback. It points to the place where light is needed. And sometimes that light is self-compassion. Sometimes it is truth. Sometimes it is the courage to set a boundary, or to break a cycle that has repeated through generations. You may have noticed patterns in your life, attracting similar kinds of people, similar dynamics, similar endings. This is no accident. It's the soul's curriculum repeating until the lesson is truly learned, not just intellectually, but energetically. Weiss reminds us that healing doesn't require the other person to change. It requires us to see clearly, to understand that what we perceive in others is often a reflection of something alive within us: abandonment, fear, shame, unworthiness. The relationship becomes a mirror, and through it, we are invited to meet ourselves. This isn't about blame. It's not about saying it's your fault. It's about reclaiming your power. Because when you understand the mirror, you can stop reacting and start responding. You can pause and ask, what is this showing me about who I believe I am? And slowly, gently, you begin to see the old stories. Maybe you believed you were unlovable, and so you attracted someone who withheld love. Maybe you believed you had to earn worth, and so you called in someone who made you prove yourself again and again. But now, you can see it. The relationship becomes sacred not because it is easy, but because it is revealing. It uncovers the silent agreements you made with yourself long ago. Agreements to shrink, to tolerate, to stay small in order to belong. And once seen, they no longer control you. There is no freedom without awareness. And this is the gift, the soul gift, of the relationship that breaks you open. It turns you inward. It asks you to remember, to reclaim, to rise. You don't have to heal everything at once, but you do have to see. Because once you see, the illusion begins to dissolve. The one who hurt you may never change. They may never understand what they awakened in you. But they didn't have to. Their role was not to complete you. Their role was to trigger the remembering. And that, in itself, was enough. There comes a moment, after the pain has been named, and the mirror has been faced, when the soul is asked to choose. Not from obligation, not from guilt, but from freedom. That moment is forgiveness. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is not denying the wound or condoning the behavior. It is the conscious act of no longer carrying the poison, of releasing the energetic tether that binds you to the story. Because as long as you remain entangled in resentment, the lesson stays incomplete. The karma remains active, the soul cannot fully rise. Weiss teaches that forgiveness is essential for the soul's journey. It clears the debris of lifetimes. It untangles the cords we carry not just in our hearts, but in our cells, in our dreams, in the invisible architecture of our being. And it begins with a simple, radical truth. You have the power to choose how you respond to what has happened. In this life, and in every life, there is free will. Even when soul contracts are in place, even when lessons are designed, nothing is absolute. You can choose bitterness, or you can choose liberation. You can choose to stay in the echo of the pain, or step into the silence that follows when it's released. Forgiveness does not require reconciliation. It does not mean you need to speak to them, to see them, to invite them back into your field. Sometimes the most powerful forgiveness happens alone, in stillness, in the quiet communion between your soul and the divine. It is there, in that inner sanctuary, where you can finally say, I see what this was. I see how it shaped me. I honor what it taught me. And now I choose to let it go. This letting go is not weakness. It is strength in its purest form. It is the warrior laying down the sword because the battle is no longer worth fighting. It is the healer releasing the wound because the body is ready to regenerate. It is the soul saying, I am more than this story. And when you release, something extraordinary happens. You begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that were fragmented. The energy you spent holding onto the past becomes available for your present. Your heart, once armored, begins to soften, and in that softness, clarity returns. You may even begin to see that the person who hurt you was also wounded, that they too were acting from a place of pain, confusion, or unconsciousness. This doesn't excuse, but it explains. And in understanding, the need for vengeance fades, compassion enters. Forgiveness in this light is not a favor you grant to someone else. It is a sacred gift you give yourself. The closing of one karmic chapter, the beginning of something new. And yet it must be authentic. You cannot force forgiveness. You cannot rush it. The soul knows when it is ready. When the lesson has landed, when the charge has softened. Until then, be patient, be gentle. There is wisdom even in the waiting. Remember, your healing is your own. It does not require anyone else to change. It does not depend on apology or recognition. It lives inside you, always waiting, always available. When you forgive, you step out of the role of victim and into the role of creator. You become the alchemist, turning pain into presence, wounds into wisdom, and the past into sacred fuel for your awakening. And maybe, just maybe, you begin to feel gratitude, not for the pain itself, but for the depth it gave you, for the resilience it revealed, for the divine remembrance it called forth. This is where the soul breathes again. There is a silence that follows healing. Not emptiness, but presence, a quiet fullness that emerges when the burden is finally laid down. And in that stillness, you begin to feel something you may not have touched in years, wholeness. Not because the relationship was resolved, Not because the person changed, but because you did. You met the pain and you stayed. You looked into the mirror and didn't flinch. You listened to the soul's deeper rhythm and answered its call. This is the return, the sacred homecoming. You are not who you were before this relationship, and that is not a loss. It is a transformation. The old self, who clung, who feared, who doubted, had to dissolve to make space for who you are becoming. And what you are becoming is not someone new, but someone true. There is clarity now. A sense that everything, every tear, every ache, every moment of despair was leading you somewhere. Not away from yourself, but toward the very center of your being. That place within you that was never broken. That has always been watching, waiting, loving. As Weiss teaches, the soul's journey is not about accumulating experiences. It's about remembering. Remembering who you are beneath the conditioning, beneath the trauma, beneath the temporary identities you were taught to wear. And when you finally remember, the world begins to look different. You no longer chase healing. You live it. You no longer need others to validate your worth. You embody it. You no longer fear being alone because you are no longer disconnected from yourself. Even the person who once felt like your greatest adversary becomes, in hindsight, a soul companion, a catalyst for your evolution, a mirror for your awakening. And while you may never walk side by side again in this life, their presence was not in vain. It carved out space within you that only love could fill. You can bless them now, not because they were right, but because you are free. And in that freedom, something else becomes possible, choosing differently. You can now enter relationships not from lack, not from past scripts, but from conscious presence. You can see others more clearly because you have seen yourself. And you can love more deeply, not in spite of your wounds, but because of how they've shaped your soul. This is how karma dissolves, not through avoidance or suffering, but through awareness, through the quiet power of choosing again, choosing from the now. You are not here to repeat old stories. You are here to write new ones, stories rooted in truth, in clarity, in the sacred remembering that your soul is vast, ancient, and capable of alchemizing anything. And if you've made it this far, through the remembering, the reckoning, the release, then perhaps your soul was always ready, ready to step into the light, ready to trust the unfolding, ready to live not from fear, but from deep, grounded knowing. You have nothing left to prove. Let that sink in. You were never broken, you were never lost. You were simply navigating the very lessons you chose before birth, lessons not to punish but to awaken. And now, here you are. Still, strong, sovereign. If these words touched your soul, subscribe to the channel and click on the video that just appeared on your screen. It was chosen especially for you. I know you'll love it.